So the question is about when somebody advances and they have a foot. Just do this one hand. They have the foot on top of your tan. We've covered the different types of fooks, and it's important, and you should watch my other videos. But this has to do with when do you need to react to essentially an attack, and to realize that certain things are attack that you wouldn't have thought of as an attack. So classically, if I simply start to come in on him, he has to turn that hand, and he has to stay wrist to my wrist so that I don't reach around. We've touched on that. Understand that it's not okay for him just to stay in a tan as I come in, because the tan can't keep the same wrist control and stop me from going around with my hand like this and striking him. The tan can only do so much. When it comes back, he can only diffuse that so much. But this hand, when he turns it into a Bill Sound hand, that he can control completely. But one of the things that we get into is, if I enter this way, he needs to know that it's too late. He's just brought his tan up. He hasn't turned it over. And you must react, as this is an attack, you must react and turn that hand over like he just did. We've talked about not rolling up into a bong, because then I just turn my hand into sort of a bong, a top bong. Now here's the crux of the matter, because we're going to get into a little bit different angle on this. It's one of the things that makes it kind of interesting, which is that when we're here and I collapse, he has to treat that as an attack the moment I start to collapse. So even if both hands are in chi sao and I step in this way, he's turned his hand over, but he hasn't already started to guide my hand, and I can slip around it. Once I slip around it, he's dead. Now, admittedly, this hand looks pretty dangerous toward me, and it is a little precarious, but I can bring my elbow in, and when he goes to strike me, my elbow diffuses him completely, and he can't really manipulate this hand to do anything serious, and I have this hand available. So again, if I start in a clear attack, he has to respond, no doubt. Because if he waits, my hand will wrap around his, and then I will strike him, and he won't be able to do anything about it. But in this particular instance, what I want to point out is, if I collapse, it's an attack. Because I'm in control. Even if I have one up and one down, if I collapse, I can still control this at the wrist. So here, if I collapse, and I've come in this far, even there, he still doesn't have control of me. So can you take control? Maybe, and he did. It's precarious. So a collapse is the same as an attack. Normally we think of someone's collapse like I'm here and he's going to do a pal jam. But I'm not out of control when I'm collapsing. This is chokio, something we're taught not to do. But if I can just slip my hand over, or if I'm doing a classic foot, and I collapse this way and my elbow's in, I come around, and by the way, here's the other key. If you're doing this attack, and you collapse and you bring your hand around so you can do that, and he can't stop you because all he's got now is a tan or whatever to come back with, if you want to prevent him from striking you and make the attack complete, you come around, and then this hand has to touch both hands, one way or the other. So if this is in a bong, it doesn't matter what it is. Instead of me normally, like in a tandar, I want to be careful. He does a tandar, you know tandar? There you go. It's embarrassing. So he does a tandar. You see how I'm holding up both hands? We would normally never do that. We would always go like that in tandar. Tandar exercise, you don't hold up both hands. But in this particular case, if I have a bong here and he has a tan on my foot and I reach around it, I want a free hand. And all I do is I just pick this hand up and touch this hand. Now he can't strike me with it. I don't have him real strong, but I have him enough that there's no way that he can strike me. Go ahead and strike. He can't. And yet, look, I just came right over his arm. Even if he were to raise his elbow, I did the top bomb. So that sums it up, is that if somebody does a classic attack. We already have covered this. You have to go into that Bill Sao hand. And that's the reason for that is because the Tan only goes back so far and I can come around. The Bill Sao hand keeps coming back and it keeps my wrist. And so I can't reach around and strike him in the eye with a finger or hit him in the head or whatever it is. Okay? That's one way. But our point today in particular is if I collapse, it's an attack. He has to be able to keep me from slipping around this hand. If I can slip around this hand, he's done for. Can he strike me? No, because I just keep my elbow down and his strike won't do any good. This hand we're not worried about because we're still wrist to wrist. And if he tries to strike me with this one, it won't work. And if he takes it off to run and strike me, he gets killed. Can't run without earning the right to run. So those are the two principles. You must react as if you're being struck, as if you're being attacked when I walk in, which you would, and even if I collapse, that's an attack. So you can't just stay in the Tan and go like this, because I will slip around, I will control it with my elbow or with this other hand, and I will attack you, and there's nothing you can do about it, okay? And similarly, it's the same way we've talked about in other videos, is that if I walk in like this, then once I get to that vertical Tan, you can no longer jut. So you can jut me when I have a horizontal Tan, you jut me when I have a flat Tan. But when I walk in, it becomes wrestling. And again, I'm not going to leave this hand free and let that hand do what it wants to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this other hand, I'm going to keep control here, and all I have to do is just block the way. And now, even though he can use his elbow to try and block me and it starts to become wrestling for him, he can't strike me with this hand or this hand without letting loose, moving, etc., and he's already dead. Can you tell? Because he talks like this. What? Yeah. That's how we tell, by the way, classically. In Chinese they do that. But normally it would sound like this. Ah.